Thank you for joining us today. I'm Grace Quantock of sickchickstrailblazer.com and healing-boxes.com, and I'm here with my dear friend Christina Rasmussen of secondfirsts.com. Now, Christina, whose new book, Second Firsts, Live, Laugh and Love, again, and yes, I put a plastic cover on it because I had to keep it that safe, because reading it that many times. Her book has been endorsed by Dr. Bernie Siegel of Love, Medicine and Miracles, and by the President and CEO of the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Christina is the founder of Second Firsts and the non-profit Life Starters, and she's built a community of 38,000 Life Starters. And of course, we know she is a stellar trailblazer. So welcome, Christina.
So good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to do a little catch-up for people who need a review. Christina, you've been taking a break in the middle of your amazingly successful book tour for your new book with Hay House. And the first question I want to ask you is, if people want to get your book right now, where do they go?
They can find it on Amazon UK, on Amazon in every different country, in the US, Barnes & Noble, in the UK. They can get it, if the bookstore doesn't have it, they can order it. It's also published in the UK, in your world as well. And it's available everywhere, really. So
Fabulous.
Thank you for asking.
I very much recommend people pause this and go and get the book. Yeah. Just had to say that. So, Second Firsts and Life After Loss can apply not just to the death of a loved one, but to so many different losses, including divorce, separation, job loss, but also to illness and the loss of one's pre-diagnosis life. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, actually, when my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, our life changed. But he was alive for another 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. So for 3.5 years, we were, without knowing what was going to happen, we didn't know he was going to die. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of hope, and we tried to live this amazing life. But in the midst of trying to live this life, you also lose so much. Mm-hmm. Your relationships change. Your ability to have joy is reduced. Your identity is very different. He changed dramatically throughout the time that he was diagnosed, and there were some very difficult times. Mm-hmm. And we both felt that we lost so much even before we lost him. But it doesn't have to be this way. And a re-entry to life after a diagnosis. I even wrote an article on, I think Kevin MD, a huge blog in the US about doctors. And I talked about what if the doctors in their meetings with us spent a few minutes talking about living instead of dying. Mm. And would it have made a difference in our lives? But nobody really talks about life. People talk about how long you have left, how many treatments you have to have. Mm-hmm. Make sure you don't put yourself out there too much because it's too exhausting, too tiring. It's tiring to have a life, right? And but in the midst of all this, we went on many adventures. We traveled to different places around the world. We bought a house knowing that he had stage 4 colon cancer and there were tumors all over his body. This was not a maybe, and we tried the best we could to live the life that we wanted to have, even if he wasn't diagnosed. But it is difficult. It's very difficult.
Very much so.
Yes.
What I really enjoyed in the book is how the exercises and the stories and the examples really feel like going through it with you in person.
I tried. Yes.
It's really well translated, and going through it personally from the point of view of the loss after illness, of the pre-diagnosis life and the post-diagnosis life, it really made a difference in helping me process that, even now years later. And can you speak to how this book came to be from going through this journey with your husband to now helping hundreds and thousands of people?
Prior to his passing and diagnosis, I used to be a grief therapist. And, it's so interesting how I never expected that my life would be filled with loss and so much loss. And in my 20s, I studied in the University of Durham in England. And I did my master's in counseling psychology. And that university, many people in the US don't know how good it is.
I just wanted to pause for a second and point out that it's one of the top 100 universities in the world and one of the top 3 in Britain.
Yes, that's true. Thank you so much. And nobody knows. Here in Durham, they don't really know what it is, but it was an amazing university. And I was very blessed to have full scholarship to go there. I mean, it was amazing. So I studied my undergraduate degree there and my master's in counseling psychology, and I chose to do my thesis on the stages of bereavement and be a grief therapist. And my professor at the time said to me, I'm surprised why you'd want to do this. You're so happy. You're such a happy person and vibrant. And but I said, I love people a lot in my life, and I couldn't imagine losing them. And I want to see how it is to get people back who have lost someone. How can they come back to life? And at the time, remember, in my 20s, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew something guided me to that decision. So I did my thesis on that. I moved to the US after that, and I worked at a hospice facilitating spouses who lost their spouse, facilitate groups like that. And at the time, my life was still great. But in 2003, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and everything went upside down. Everything changed. That was the first experience of loss. I had also lost a baby girl prior to that, but that was the first time. I'd never expected this. I thought that was going to be the one thing in my youth that I would experience, and then I would have an easy sail until my 60s or 70s, right?
right, because it had happened.
Yes.
The thing that, yeah.
I lost my daughter. I was pregnant, and she couldn't breathe outside when she came outside of me. So when she was born, she died, and that was really hard. And I thought, if only I can get through this, then my life would be so great again. But then just a few years later, she was diagnosed, and then a few years later after that, he died. And I had 2 young daughters at the time, no job, never worked in the U.S. before. Because when we were in the U.S., I had no green card. We were there with a visa, and my visa was not a working visa. So I couldn't go and do my job. And when he died, I couldn't go back to my work because I was grieving so much. And then I also realized that I couldn't believe how painful it was. I couldn't believe how inhuman it was. I couldn't believe how grief was such an inhuman experience taking place in a human body, and how the world didn't stop to help me. And there was nobody. I couldn't help myself. Others couldn't help me. Professionals couldn't help me. I didn't want to take pills, and that was my choice and my decision. I don't have opinions about other people's choices. I actually understand when people choose to take them because it is unbearable. And I realized then that if I was ever to come back to life, I would go back and get everyone else. And that's what's happening now.
Thank you for coming back, for getting yourself out and coming back to get the rest of us.
And it was a long journey, a longer journey than I thought it would be. And getting to this book, I knew I wasn't going to write a memoir, and I knew it wasn't going to be about my story, because there were so many books that were about other people's stories, and they are very healing to read. and it's a part of the journey. But after you read all those stories, then your life is still the same. Nothing has changed in your life. And I wanted to write a book about the steps that you need to take to begin again, to re-enter again. And I knew I wasn't able to write it the next years after his loss. It would have to be, it's now been 7 years since he died. I would have to have a big gap between his loss and writing this book. And when I did write it, it was exactly what it needed to be, a pathway back to life, the reentry process, a way of living again. And in my work with thousands of people, I discovered a hiding place. I discovered a place between the two lives. Even when you go through a diagnosis, when you first get the diagnosis, your world collapses. And you don't know what's going to happen next. You think your life is over, right?
Yeah. Everything, with the moment we're calling it a time of phoenix fire, when everything burns up around you and everything you knew is gone, and it feels like everything you touch just crumbles and like everything is going, and you don't even know who you are anymore. People start referring to you as by the name of the condition and not by your name.
And you know, Grace, my husband said to me, I haven't changed, that he hadn't changed, but everyone around him changed the way they looked at him.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was very upsetting to him.
It's very, very hard. People would ring me and ask, how are you? And I'd be like, well, I'm really happy today. And I'd be like, no, but how is your health? And it was like, sometimes it's like the condition is more important than you.
Yes. Well, I guess I'm happy to not be one of those people. I always ask about, I think about your career first for some reason. Maybe I shouldn't, you know.
You always ask beautiful questions. It's wonderful. But one thing that I really personally connected within the book was when you wrote that we can't recreate the life we once had.
Yes.
And we have to reinvent life for yourself. And that's where I again, it comes back to the diagnosis moment and creating the life after it. So can you tell us a little bit about your mail carrier moment and the re-entry model? So the after diagnosis now, can you tell us a bit about?
You know, being able to, so after I came back from the hospital where he died, and I remember the moment of leaving him and literally getting up from the bed and walking to the phone outside of the room to call the funeral home, because that's apparently, I was told at the time, the first call to make, and all of our family was there anyway, so this was to make arrangements, and it had to be from me. Nobody, because I was his wife, I had to be the one calling and saying. So I remember making that call, and honestly, Grace, it was like I was having an out-of-body experience. My body was moving, and I was either insane or gone with him somewhere in the other side. And, you know, I went home and told my kids, which was the hardest thing I have ever had to do in my life. Nothing compares to that. Telling your children they're dead. And they're small. They were very small, and their reaction was so different to the adult reaction, you know. And but the time went by, and getting to that story, I went back to school because I didn't think I should be doing grief work because I was suffering so much. I graduated with straight A's. I got a second postgraduate degree from Northeastern, and I went and got a job at the corporate world because I thought that was the thing to do. I thought that was me getting my life back. But what I didn't know at the time was that I was actually in a waiting room, in the hiding place that I talk about. And I will tell you how you get out and how I got out from there. This place in between two lives. But the problem with that place is that when we exit one life, we think we enter the second chapter. But we don't. We actually go in a place between two lives, but we don't know that we're in the waiting room because we don't realize there's an amazing life waiting for us right here. So we go in the waiting room and we go to wait for time to heal us, for time to make things better. Remember how many times people told you even, just take it easy, give it some time, let's see what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they say that?
Yes, they did.
And time, we don't have time, right? And we don't have unlimited time. So I went to this waiting space without knowing I was there, and I was viewing my life from a place of the widow, and for someone who's newly diagnosed, the cancer patient, all those different labels. The widow, the single parent, unlucky, living in an unfair world, living in a place where life was much better for everyone else, but not so good for me. And I had this job that I hated. I got myself the job to make sure that I have money and health insurance to feed my kids, but I didn't like it at all. So for about a year and a half after his loss, I was living life in the wrong way. It wasn't about living fully. It was about surviving and feeling very scared every single day and really watching my life going by until one day. And I didn't know at the time that was the defining moment, and that was the opening of the door from the waiting room. The reason why I share this story with people is because people think that the only way to change their life is through making these big jumps and leaps and big steps and changing careers or going out on a date or working really hard to get a job they really don't really like. These are not the things that will get you to the life that's waiting for you here. So one day I was living at the time in the Boston area. Right now I'm in California. This is the first time you talk to me in California.
It is.
It's an amazing place. And I was living in the Boston area, and it was a week before Christmas, and I told my parents, don't come and stay with me at Christmas. I really want to experience real life. I want to experience the life with my two kids and really know how it is to be this unit, this family. And there was so much snow outside that the mailman wouldn't deliver our mail. And I decided, I took the girls and I said, girls, let's go and shovel outside. So we give the mailman space to put his little car in front of the driveway so he could put in Boston, people who had never been there, some years the snow is like walls. I mean, it's up there. It literally comes here. So shoveling that was a big job, and the girls and I were shoveling and shoveled and spent 2 or 3 hours shoveling, and we made enough space. I walked the steps to see if it could fit, and I said, girls, we did a good job. We're going to get our Christmas cards. He's going to stop. So we walked back to the house, and the girls were playing, and I was waiting. I mean, for me, at the time, my life wasn't that exciting. I went to work and came back, and I was on vacation. It was Christmas time, and the cards was a big deal, and people sent some gifts. And
well,
so I watched.
They are. When you were hurting, that's why we did healing boxes, because when you're hurting, to get something through the mail is a really big deal.
It's huge, and the healing box, and I've received one from you. It's amazing. It's like a gift in the midst of a snowstorm, right? And for me, getting those things were so important. And so I'm waiting, and I see him arriving in my neighborhood and driving and stopping, looking. He saw the change. I mean, someone obviously showed and continued to drive. And in that moment in time, I had two choices. Choice number one was to sit back down on my couch and cry my eyes out because my life was so bad I couldn't even get my mail. And that was the choice I was making. I would try something the best I could. It wouldn't work out. And then I would go back to my new identity of the widow, of the single parent. I have no help from anyone. And oh my God, it is a terrible life. And it was not a good life. I'm not saying it was. But choice number two was to put on my boots and run. And for those who have never heard of the story before, it's really funny. For those who have, I'm sorry I'm repeating it, but it's the only way for me to help people understand when they can exit the waiting room, how to find the portal into the life that they want. And then we'll talk about this life, because it's not a perfect life, but it's a life that is magical and adventurous, and the perception of a new chapter and a second chapter needs to be changed a little bit. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But I put on my boots and I started running. And I left my kids in the house. I mean, I was in a place of, I don't know, how dare he not stop? I worked so hard. He can't do this to me. My life can't keep passing by like this. So I put on the boots and I was running and I was crying. And 4 or 5 blocks down, so you know how he drove, delivered, and drove again. And every time I would catch up with him, because I was on foot, right, he would drive again. So I'm sure he could see me from the rear view window. He did see me. I am certain of it. And he thought, there's a crazy woman running with her pajamas on and snow boots, and no, actually, no, it wasn't even snow boots. I had my Uggs. And I caught up with him because he delivered a package, and I said to him, why didn't you deliver my mail? And he said to me, there was not enough space to deliver it. And I said, but I shoveled so well. And he said, you should have shoveled better. I said, that's the best I could do. And he said, you should have asked your husband to do it. And I said, my husband is dead, and he would if he could, but he's dead. Now give me back my mail. And I remember the man's face went white, and he literally felt so bad about what he had just said. I mean, who says that? Nobody says that. No, this was a message from the universe. I swear, this was not a normal situation. And he gave me my mail, and in that moment in time, first of all, I always got my mail after that, but I also got my life back. I started looking at my life as the mailman driving by every day. Because I was a widow and a single parent and I lost so much in my life, I should just be sad watching the mailman instead of just going after it. So I went after a new job, at my corporate office. I went on a first date with my now husband. I went after my life. And another thing that I did during the days after that incident, I decided to smile, even though I didn't like going to that job. I remember walking into the new year and with a smile on my face, and everyone was like, did something happen? I'm like, no, nothing happened. I'm just having a good day. And I started thinking this way, and slowly my life started to get better after that. And then, of course, there's a lot going on after that, but you can ask me another question. I'm talking so much. I'm sorry.
No, but thank you for sharing the story. And if you want to talk, like you said, a little bit about the re-entry and the new chapter, the life after that.
Yes. So people's perception of life after loss or life after diagnosis or life after a life interruption or a bad event, whatever that event is it a job loss, a divorce, a breakup, rejection, being told no, whatever changes your identity, being diagnosed with a horrible disease that you have to live with forever, being different than everyone else, being the minority. There's so many losses. Aging is a loss. And above all, I think the biggest loss that we experience throughout all of those losses that I talked about is the loss of worthiness. With my experience with talking to so many people, they feel no longer worthy to have the life they deserve. So they have no worthiness, they have no confidence that they're as good as everyone else. And then they give up. They go in the waiting room and wait because it's more comfortable there. So first of all, one way out is to find a small step, like me going after the mailman. It was a crazy step, but it wasn't a big step. I was just trying to get my cards, my mail. Change your hair color, paint the walls of your house a different color, move the couch around, go to work a different way, go to a different cafe, do something that is 5% plugging into the life that you want to have. Once you start doing that, you find the proof that there is life out there, outside of this place in between. And once you start to see the life that is waiting for you to have it in the way that don't think that life is supposed to be perfect.
Yeah.
And people expect life to just be a bed of roses. I think it can be like this for a period of time. Like I'm living this right now. I'm in a stretch of a few years of pure joy. Okay. I talk to universe, God, many times, and I say, don't you change me, that I won't be able to serve you if you change this. but it's not a perfect life. It's an adventurous life. It has a lot of obstacles and fears and worries and hardships, but I am in control and I'm creating it. So getting back in control of your destiny and seeing your life as an adventure is, instead of like this perfect thing that you have to create. Happiness is not perfect.
And I'm loving what you're saying about the adventure, and what we always say in Sick Chicks Trailblazer is that the diseases, the challenges, the disabilities, they're just the footnotes, but you are the adventure story.
Yes, I'm having an adventure. I'm having a full-blown adventure, and I think that life here that is waiting for you is an adventure. It is a fairy tale in the way that, I talk about fairy tales a lot, and I believe in fairy tales.
Good.
But not in the way that people think fairy tales are. If you watch fairy tales on television, there's dragons, and there's bad guys, and people die. And yes, there's a princess and prince and all that stuff, but it's not about the happy ending. It's about the middle. I've had 2 fairy tales already. I'm living one right now, and I lived one in the past. And maybe I get to live another one. I don't know. And I have to say, I want to share. I've shared this story once before. On my way to, I think, Seattle or one of the book signing events, I sat next to a woman who was 93. And she started talking to me, and I told her I was an author, and she loved books, and I told her what I was writing about, and she said that she had lost 3 husbands. She was widowed 3 times. And she said she was blessed 3 times. And the way she talked about her 3 chapters was magnificent. She told me about every husband and how wonderful they were in their own way. And I would ask, which husband do you miss the most? And she turned around, and what a stupid question, but she turned around and she said, all of them had different things. My last husband was really funny. My first husband, I had my kids with him, I can't remember what she said about the second husband, and she's older, right? She's 93, so she had a long life, and she had 3 amazing husbands, or 3 husbands. And the way she talked about her life, it wasn't poor me. Do you know I was widowed 3 times? I had 3 amazing husbands in my life, and I was widowed 3 times, but my life is very blessed.
Thank you. What a reframe.
It's a shift, right? And one of the steps in my, after plugging into life, and at 5%, at chasing down the mailman, or telling your neighbor to park in a different space, or telling your friend something you have not dared to tell her before, or speaking the truth, right? And creating your new identity. The next step is shifting your mind and shifting the way you look at life, and the way you talk to yourself. So I shifted from the widow, the single parent, the unlucky person, tough life vocabulary to warrior, persistent, resilient, dreamer, thriver. I'm going to go out there and do the impossible. I'm going to show the world what I can do because of what I've been through. Yeah. So when you shift your mentality from this weakness to this strength, your life changes. And for you, I mean, look what you've done with your diagnosis, and you're a trailblazer. Do you see how your shift in your words?
Thank you. And yes, very much, because we chose those words to go from being called the sick chick, the broken one,
yes.
the disabled girl, to saying, no, I'm not going to be any of that anymore. If medicine hasn't caught up with what my body needs yet, and if I'm doing all the weird healing things, it doesn't mean that I'm different. It just means that I'm a trailblazer.
Yes.
And that's empowering.
And that's powerful.
Thank you. My last question is that lots of Sick Chicks Trailblazers who will be listening to this will be dealing with loss and also wanting to draw something good from that and maybe start a business or become liberated in their own way. And you write and speak very movingly about turning loss into a launch pad. So could you just share just one little thing from that with us here today?
So I have to say that this is not for everyone.
Mm.
So if someone is listening and doesn't have that need to take their story and make it into this launch pad for other people, it is okay.
Yes, yes.
We have to say that.
Definitely.
Because not everyone has that need. And for those who don't have it, my advice is to look around them in their life today and try and make their own life the life that they want to have and recreate themselves. Find that new identity that is waiting for them to discover. Go on the book, go through the grief cleanse exercise on the book. Find your thriver. Find the watcher. There's a part of us that I call the watcher. There's a part of us that has all the answers. Look for the answers within you and re-enter your life the way that you want to, not the way that you think you should, not the way other people with the same diagnosis have done. This is your life. So that's the message for those folks who are still struggling to figure out their life after diagnosis. Mm-hmm. For those who feel that they have a purpose and they're here to change the world just like you are and just like me, first of all, realize that this is not going to be about you anymore. It's going to be about everyone else. Mm-hmm. And that's going to drive you even more because the work that we do, this has nothing to do with me anymore. My life is fixed. I have what I need in my life. Mm-hmm. I do this for everyone else. And believe in your voice. There's a voice inside of you that you barely listen to. Mm-hmm. I want you to be quiet, and I'm not going to say go meditate. Meditation is a wonderful thing, but try and find out what the message is. Both Grace and I are not writers; we're messengers. I hope it's okay that I describe you like that. We are messengers, and we receive messages from the world and we share it through our filter of our own experience. So use your experience and start communicating. Start sharing your message. And don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't copy anyone else. Don't try to mimic anybody else doing this. Your message is unique. And unless you share it from your heart and soul, it will not be successful. It has to come from you. And go for it. There's nothing. I always say you've been through the unthinkable, and you can do the impossible.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, let this be your permission slip now Christina has just told you. So the last thing, if people want to work with you, where should they go? If they want to become a life starter, if they want to get involved, and if they want to spread the word about life after loss, if you could tell people one action, what's it going to be?
So the number one thing I say people to do is I write this letter every Friday. That's called The Message in a Bottle. So if you go to my website, secondfirst.com, and I don't market. Even when my book came out, I wrote my blog and I wrote a thing underneath, P.S. Today, the book is, I should be more business savvy, but I really love to write the letter. So The Message in a Bottle, secondfirst.com, under my picture, there's a line that says, you see the message in a bottle, you just put your name and email in there, and every Friday you'll receive a life-changing letter. And then in 2014, we will be launching the nonprofit, The Life Starters, where you get to re-enter alongside, hopefully one day, millions of people going through the re-entry process through a social network, communicating and sharing and taking action steps all together. And that's, you can actually sign up for that right now, and so you get notified when the network is ready at thelifestarters.org. Or you can go on secondfirst.com and you'll see the sign up there for that as well. And people ask me about the reentry program. I haven't come up with a date that I'm going to do it again, but there's a lot of people waiting for that, and I'm very grateful. So sometime in February or early March, we will have another reentry program, so watch out for that when it comes out. And that's it.
Thank you. So I hope everybody clicks away and heads to Get Messy in a Bottle, because you're going to get everything you need right there.
Yes.
And thank you so much for joining us today. And blessed be and happy trailblazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.